All right, let's for Unit 1. We are talking about solving absolute value equations. When we cover this topic in Algebra 1, I tell people that this is going to be a tricky topic and a place for mistakes. Hopefully you've practiced this a little bit before, but if not, we're going to review it. It should go a little bit easier. The biggest thing to remember, and I'm going to say this now and in the middle and at the end, that the biggest thing to understand is that you can have and often do have two answers to an absolute value equation. You can have two answers, you can have one answer, and then in some cases you can have no solution, just like a regular equation or whatever. So we're going to do a few examples and then do some things. So this first one is not an equation, right? There's no equals going on. There's no equals. Right? This one we have an expression. So we're going to evaluate this expression if x equals negative 15. So we're going to use, we've been talking about properties and all that stuff. We're going to use the substitution property. Since x equals negative 15, we can substitute negative 15 in for x, right? So that's when we do substitution property on things. What I like to do and what I teach people to do and what I'd like for you to do is to first rewrite the expression or equation with parentheses everywhere the variable is. And the reason why that's the first step is because it helps you to not make mistakes with negatives and things like that. All right, so we're going to plug in this negative 15 right there. So then we evaluate this just like anything else. Just a quick reminder, what does absolute value do? Absolute value of whatever is in here turns it positive. So absolute value of negative 4 is 4. The absolute value of 5 is 5, right? So that's what absolute value does, right? So let's start with what's inside the absolute value. We're going to do 4 times negative 15. Bring down everything else. 9.6 minus the absolute value of 4 times negative 15 is negative, because a negative times a positive is negative, right? And so it's negative 60. You can verify that on your calculators or whatever. Is totally fine. I'm going to bring down a minus. Yeah, bring down minus 3. Right. So then we're going to finish cleaning up inside the absolute value. So negative 60 minus 3 is negative 63. Bring down that absolute value, bring down this minus, and 9.6. Right, so the absolute value of negative 63 is positive 63. So we're still bringing it down. You see how I'm keeping all this lined up? I kind of harped on this on a recent previous video that want to make sure your work is really neat, because that'll help keep you from making careless mistakes. So minus absolute as I was saying, the absolute value of negative 63 is positive 63. We still have a minus, right? Because that's this minus. See how if I keep it lined up, it's easy to know what's happening. So 9.6 minus 63. I could probably do that in my head. You could too. But when we start getting decimals, we may as well do a little sanity check with a calculator, right? So let's do that. So 9.6 minus 63 equals negative 56. So does that answer make sense? It should be negative because 63 is bigger. And then 3 minus 9 is about 6. So yeah, it definitely makes sense, right? So negative 56.4 is the solution here. You see what I did there? I don't know if you noticed that. Even though I used the calculator, I made sure that it made sense. And the reason is because calculators can't do your thinking for you. They can only do what you tell them to do. And so sometimes if you tell them to do something wrong, then they'll give you the wrong answer. And then a student will say, but the calculator said, well, what did you put in the calculator, right? So always do that, especially if you're putting in a calculator. Make sure your answers make sense. So now we're going to solve an absolute value equation, right? So the first step in solving an absolute value equation is to isolate the absolute value, which we have done already. And by isolate means solve for that. We're going to see some examples here soon where isn't done. So there's a step before we do this. But once we have isolated the absolute value, the next thing is we've got to split this into two versions of this equation. Why do we need to do that? Well, because if this evaluates out to be positive whatever, then yeah, so if this comes out to be positive 12 inside of here, then it works. But if this evaluates out to be negative 12 on the inside of here, it also works. It's the absolute value of negative 12. So we have to have the positive version and the negative version, right? And so that's what we have to do. So the way I teach it in Algebra 1 is to do 12 equals positive y minus 18, and then 12 equals negative y minus 18. But since this is Algebra 2, we're going to kind of do this with a shortcut way. So the first step on this one is always to divide off that negative, right? Divide by -1, which is always going to flip the sign of whatever is on there. And we kind of previewed that with that kind of scribbly bit we did at the beginning, where we get the positive version and the negative version of whatever is over here. And so we're going to kind of skip that preemptive step and go straight for a shortcut mode. That's one of the nice things about Algebra 2 is in Algebra 2, some of the concepts we learn are the same concepts, but we get to learn a shortcut. And we kind of talked about that in FOIL and other things. So we're going to turn this into positive 12 equals y minus 18 and negative 12 equals y minus 18. Sorry, I had to breathe. I was getting too excited, right? And then we just solve each one of these little baby equations and get two different answers. So over here, what is attached to the y? Well, 18 is. How is it attached? It's subtracted. So we're going to add 18 to both sides, plus 18, plus 18. That cancels, leaving us with y equals. You see, also, this is another thing that we did. Since this is Algebra 2, you're big kids now. I am including that symmetric property step and go ahead and switching the y over here, right? So y equals 40. Yay, cute. Okay, so let's do this one. How is this 18 attached? It's subtracted. We add it, right? Same difference. Same thing. Plus 18, plus 18. This time we've got different signs, right? So we subtract, keep the sign. So y also equals 6. Beautiful. Okay, let's do another one. This one I think you're going to like. This one has got something fun in it. Okay, so remember, in the last example, I said the very first step is always to isolate the absolute value. That's very important. I see that mistake made a lot, especially in Algebra 1 when we're doing these. They forget to isolate this. They know you have to split it into two, and so they get excited and jump straight into that. But it's very important before we split it into two that we isolate that absolute value. So we got to get rid of this 42 first. So how is this 42 attached to everything else? Well, it's added. So to get rid of it, we're going to subtract by 42. Minus 42 minus 42. Left on the left side here is the absolute value of 5x minus 3 equals negative. That should flash a clue, right? Well, we'll get it on there. So negative 35. Now, we actually can stop right here and write the answer. We don't even have to go and split it in two or any of those things because the answer is no solution. How do I know that already? Well, I know it because of that right there. What does the absolute value do again, right? Remember what we just said and all the things. Absolute value turns whatever is inside of it positive. So is there any possible way to have the absolute value of something come out negative? No, there is not. Therefore, the answer is no solution. Well, BLAPO, which is great. If you ever get absolute value equals negative something, no solution, moving on. We like that because it makes our lives easier, right? Let's do one more example and then we'll be through. Okay, so this you might be like, okay, well, we got to isolate the absolute value, and you do, but it's already isolated. It's just equal to a whole lot of junk, right? So, what have I done? I don't want to do a layer style. Cancel. All right. So we're ready to go. We're ready to split this into a positive and negative version. Now, this one is a little bit tricky because there's an X over here, right? So let me show you what I mean. We're gonna split this into a positive version and negative version. The positive version is just take the absolute value away, write down the problem. right? So it's x plus 10 equals 4x minus 8, right? The negative version, now this is where this gets tricky. The negative version has to make this whole thing negative, not just the 4, right? That is very important. That's muy importante. I need to learn a few other languages for that phrase. But it's very, very important, because this, if we write x plus 10 equals negative 4x minus 8, that is totally straight up, completely and utterly wrong, because it is negative all of this, which is going to flip both of those signs. So that is very, very important that you understand that whatever is on this thing, when we're splitting it, that entire thing is negative. All right, let's solve this guy. So this one, we're going to get our x's together. So we're going to bring this one and going to bring him over with his friend. So to move something from one side to the other, one side to the other, you either add or subtract. It's positive, so we're going to have to subtract to move it over. So minus 4x minus 4x. Those cancel. X minus 4x is negative 3x. Bring down plus 10 equals, bring down what we haven't touched, so bring down minus 8. We're going to go ahead and work on this one a little bit. First thing we're going to do over here is we're going to distribute this negative, right? So bring down this left side. X plus 10 equals negative 4x, which we figured, right? But then it's positive 8 plus 8, because a negative times a negative is a positive, or plus 8. All right, going back to this one. What are we doing over here? We're going to subtract the 10, minus 10. That cancels. Over here, we're going to get our friends together. So plus 4x, plus 4x. That cancels. Over here, bring down negative 3x is what's left, equals negative 8 plus negative 10. Same sign, so negative 18. Over here, x plus 4x is 5x. Bring down plus 10 equals, bring down 8. All right, switching to my alternate color for intermediate steps. Over here, we're just nearly done. We're going to divide by the negative 3. We're going to divide because it is multiplied. So we're going to do the inverse opposite to get rid of it. This one, we want to get rid of this addition subtraction first, because that's going to be easier. So we're going to subtract the 10 because it's added. Cancels there. Over here, this excuse me, cancels, leaving us with just x equals positive. Negative divided by negative is positive. Positive 9. Right? Over here, we bring down the 5x equals 8 plus negative 10 is negative 2. And we got to get rid of this 5 over here still. So divide by 5. Divide by 5. That 5 cancels, leaving us with x equals negative 2/5. Is that what I meant to get? Yes, it is. Now, I specified check. It's a good idea to always check equations, right? And make sure they work. With an absolute value, it's really important that we do that. And really, the main thing we've got to check is this side over here. Because if that side turns out to be negative, then our end result is negative. And we can even kind of cheat check a little bit on this one. It's a fraction, and so it a little bit more work. But if we have a negative times a positive, it turns out negative. Negative plus negative is negative, which means this one is not, in fact, going to work. Let's double check this one, make sure it works. We put 9 in here, we get 9. We get 90. How about 19? Absolute value of 19 is 19. And then we put a 9 in here. 4 times 9 is whatever 4 times 9 is, 28. No, 36. That's 7. What was I doing? 36 minus 8 is not 19, so something's still wrong. Did I do something wrong? Let me pause and double check what I'm doing. That was easy enough. You probably caught it already. This right here shouldn't be 9. 18 divided by 3 is not 9. It is not, in fact, 9. It is not, in fact, 9 at all. That's what I get for trying to run through this video quick enough that it's not super long. How about positive 6, which would make this a 16. This 24. 24 minus 8 is also 16. So this one does in fact work, which means this one is correct. This one doesn't work. Sometimes both answers will work. Sometimes neither one will work. Which is why it's very important that you always check those. We'll see you in the next one. We got a couple more lessons in this unit, and then we're going to be done with Unit 1. If you're one of my students, I'll see you in class. If you're not one of my students, thanks for joining us. Let us know how else we can help you with math, science, or other general homeschooling things. Bye-bye.